America.
It's good to see a lot of familiar faces here, which is great.
Two of my guys to start with, Clint and Darren.
Yeah, so Darren. Hi, Darren. Hi, Clint. Good to see you both.
Hello there.
We want to see you guys. Turn
Yeah.
your cameras on when you come.
Okay. We will get started, I think. So welcome everybody. While I'm trying to juggle with Midigal, which is always fun to start with. First thing, it's very timely. Welcome everybody, but very timely. Anybody who's not on mute, could they please mute themselves just so we can actually all hear each other? That would be fantastic. Thank you. I'll sort of tap you on the shoulder once I've done the introduction. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm James Schomburg. I'm very excited to say this is hopefully it is the first time that the five of us have got together to speak like this. We hope it's not the last time based on the interest today. And what we're going to be sharing with is a pretty exciting topic, which is very topical. Simply, how can we pay our staff more and yet earn more as well as a business owner? So for those of you who are practice owners, we're hopefully going to give you some tips about how you can actually reward your staff more financially, if that's what they're looking for, which is one conversation in itself. But at the same time, not get burnt yourself. And for staff members who are listening as well, because I know there are some here, is how to actually make it work as a win-win, that if you get paid more, the employer also is rewarded as well. So without any more conversations, we're going to get into it, but I'm just going to have some just house rules. Firstly, if for all of us who haven't got yourself on mute, please do while we're speaking. Just we've got so many people. We've got 170 in the end have registered. We expect probably only half of you will actually be listening to this live. But we're very excited to have so many of you here. So please keep yourself on mute for that exact reason. Second thing is we are loving questions from you all. We're going to be giving you plenty of time, half an hour at the end, to ask all your questions. If you do have any questions, just put them in the chat section and I'll collate them and field it to the team of five of us. So if you can all do that for me, please put your questions in there and we'll make sure that you get those questions answered in the last half an hour. So hold your questions except in the chat, but also you can ask me verbally at the end. And for those of you, I've got messages already coming in that some of you can't mute yourself. I'll try and find you on the list and mute you. But without any more conversations, let's get into it. And we're going to start with Nick. So I'm going to hand the reins over to Nick to start this. And yeah, really excited to hear what Nick's saying. So just give me one moment, Nick. And I'm going to put myself out of the spotlight and put you in.
Thank you, James. Appreciate it. I want to say thank you to James for organising this wonderful event. I want to credit my fellow speakers, Mick, Shane, Jade and James. Lovely to see familiar faces and new faces here. And my promise is to stick to time and give you some good value. So I'm starting my clock now as soon as I share my screen and my presentation. Can someone just give me a thumbs up that I can see, James, when you can see my screen? Beautiful. Okay, so let's get started. So yeah, I want to talk to you today about two things that need to happen together in our businesses right now in 2024, which is us becoming more profitable in the last 3 or 4 years and us being able to pay our clinicians more than we've ever paid them before. So I think those two things are mutually exclusive in terms of being able to run a decent business in 2024. And you deserve to make more profit than you have in the last 3 years. And our clinicians also deserve to be paid more than they have in the last 3 years. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about how our clinic has nearly doubled our fees in the last 4 years. So I'm going to give you a bit of history, and then I'm going to show you how we did it. And it's actually really simple. And then I'm going to share a cheat sheet with you at the end. And as per what James says, just write your questions in the chat box and we can speak after an hour's time. So here was our situation at my main clinic, Scarborough Physio, in 2020, is we were charging approximately $82 average per patient, and that's across private, compensable, initial and follow-ups. So that was an average. I was paying my physios around early $40 an hour, the experienced ones. But we're all flogging ourselves, guys. So we were treating 60 to 70 a week, and 60 was a light week for me. I was used to 80 to 100 patients a week. I could do it, but I really didn't expect my team to be able to do it. My therapists were tired and our clinic profit was around 200K. So it was quite good, but it could be better. So fast forward to now, I did the stats 2 weeks ago. Our current average, including DVA, would you believe, that we still see, it's more than 140 per patient. I can pay hardworking physios a base of $60 an hour these days, which is really incredible, and I'm very privileged to do so. The bulk of my physios treat 45 to 55 people a week, so they're energized. They've got 5 to 10 hours a week that they don't have to do anything, and our profits have doubled. So, it's a pretty good story. Our business is better than it was, so we've transformed to a premium clinic. And the clinic is premium for the therapists and the business, as well as the patients, because our quality's improved. I've been able to hire a more experienced team. So yeah, our fees have almost doubled in 4 years. So I'm going to show you what levers we pulled to achieve this. So for the purposes of today and not having too much time, we pulled 4 levers with our fee structures. Lever 1 was a fee policy. Lever 2 was fee tiering. Lever 3 was a plan to get EPC patients to pay a private fee. Lever 4 was getting out of preferred provider schemes, and we were in the 2 big ones. So fee policy. Before 2020, my practice manager would come to me in December and just ask every year, what are we doing with the fees? And, I felt put on the spot. I didn't really know. I had no structure. I had no system. It was ad hoc. Some years I didn't even increase it. I don't know why. So yeah, we would increase it annually. The amounts varied, sometimes we didn't. And then a nasty little thing started happening 3 years ago, which was inflation or CPI. It started really going up. So we decided that we need a fee strategy. What did we decide? Okay, so both of my clinics, we settled on this fee strategy about 2 years ago. We decided on annual increases on the 1st of January. We decided to make this all private services with no discretion. So we have physio, Pilates, massage, psychology. That's it. And so basically all of those services, we decided we will go up by either 5% or CPI, whichever was higher. And we have added in the last 2 years, with the increases to superannuation of 0.5% that occur on the 1st of July, we also did a small mid-year increase. So, that particular policy that we implemented, it's borne fruit already. Basically, it's all profit, bar the proportion that the therapists earn through their commission. Second thing we decided to do, guys, was fee tiering. So, this is spoken about a lot in our profession, and it's sort of, sometimes it's practical, sometimes it's not. 2020 and before, everyone charged the same. I had 18 years of experience. We had 2 to 3 year experience physios, and I chose to do shorter appointments, but yeah, the fee was the same. And I still felt like I could get a better outcome with my clients in a shorter appointment than my colleagues. I didn't think that was fair. So what did we decide to do? We decided to tier our fees in around 2021. We determined that a senior physio in our business was a physio with 10 years of experience or a master's degree or higher. We only made a small difference in tiering between senior and regular physio, and it was $10 more for the senior physio. And as I've said here, it may not actually sound like much, but it actually made a very big difference to earnings via the commission. So what we would do is when we would make someone a senior physio, we wouldn't necessarily give them a pay rise in their hourly rate beyond what they were on already. But their commission was inclusive of, it was a proportion of the revenue they brought in per period. So, if a physio saw 50 patients a week and half of them were private, that's an extra $250 that they could share in. So, it produced a really instant and good result. So we're pretty happy with that. Okay, so the third thing that we did was EPC patients. So, this has been a bugbear of our profession for some time. I remember when EPC came in 20 years ago, and it was, relative to the private fee that was being charged at the time. But, without being indexed over time, it became unsustainable to bulk bill EPC patients. So, if you're watching this, that'd be the first thing that I would recommend not to do. I don't even talk about that. But, around the 2020 time, we had stopped bulk billing EPC patients, but we did have tiered gaps. So I remember the tiered gap when we stopped doing this process. My EPCs were paying $30 out of pocket, and for the other physios, it was 20. I think when we hired a graduate, it was 10. But this amount was still $20 to $30 short of the private fee. And who is it that complains about the fees in your business anyway? It's the EPC patients. So what did we decide to do? We decided to make the following rules. So, this was quite a big jump, guys. So we decided, and this was around mid-2021. I think it would have been the 1st of July. We implemented that EPC patients would pay the private fee. This was a pretty big deal. Got a bit of pushback, but we were no worse off for it. When they paid their fee, the girls at the front would process their EPC rebate, which went back into their account. So we changed the scripts of how we would explain this. We lost a handful of patients. I remember I had this old Dutch guy that used to come every year. He was like 95 years old. He would have his EPC visits and never come back. And I remember not seeing him for about a year after that. And then I remember seeing him in the waiting room again. And it's like he must have gone somewhere else. They weren't as good as he wanted. And then he came back and he was paying the full fee. So this was a really interesting case study that, I think every time you do this, you lose a small proportion of patients, but a good proportion of them will come back. You'd be surprised. And the final big lever that we pulled was preferred provider schemes. So again, when I signed up to them, 20 odd years ago, the fee was comparable. And like all of these compensable schemes, bar a couple, lack of indexation created this gap and this difference between our private fee and the Bupa and the Medibank preferred provider scheme fees. So we were in those two big ones, Bupa and Medibank. It did do really well for us early on when the clinic was new in the region. And like many of you, I was actually really scared to leave. I thought there would be a fairly significant impact. And I delayed it for probably too long. But yeah, it got to fever pitch. In early 2022, as I've said here, the difference between our private fee and the Bupa Medibank was around $30, and it was getting worse and worse and worse every year. So, it was scary. About half of our physio revenue was from private patients. And of this 50% revenue, about half of that again was Medibank and Bupa. So yeah, this was a risk that we had to take. 25% of our revenue were Medibank and Bupa preferred provider patients. So what actually helped me decide to leave, guys? Did some calculations. It's good to consider the numbers here. If the fee difference was 20% between our private fee and the Bupa and Medibank fee, we could actually afford to lose 20% of our Bupa and Medibank patients and actually be no worse off. So that was a really cool thing for me to explain to our team. What I decided to do was I decided to speak to 2 to 3 owners who I'd seen post in forums who had exited the schemes. And interestingly, a couple of them were from South Australia, where I believe Bupa has a massive foothold in the health insurance. Now, this South Australian owner said to me how good it was after she had left, and that gave me the confidence to leave. And, I was very happy to leave. So we decided to tell our Bupa and Medibank patients that we're exiting. We decided to explain why. It was sad. A few of them didn't come back, citing affordability. But again, with only 5% leaving and a 20% bump to the Bupa and Medibank patients' fees back to the normal fees, we were financially better off. So we basically normalized our fee structure so EPC and preferred provider patients were paying the normal fee. I've gone pretty quick. The final thing that I wanted to say to you guys really in my talk is I want to talk about this concept of the dip. So like we've been through, 3 to 4 years of significant hardship in business. And I've found in my own business, guys, that the rebuilding and the reconstruction work that I've done in my business during this last 2 to 3 years is what has allowed us to come out the other side with our profit double what it was before. Would our profit have doubled if we hadn't been through the dip? It's really hard to know. But the cool thing you can see if you're watching the screen here, and those who aren't watching and listening, is the results you're getting before the dip are rarely as good as the results after, but you have to go through the dip. And, I honestly believe that what we've done the last 2 to 3 years, guys, the blood, sweat, and tears we put into our business has actually been the building of your rocket ship. And the vast majority of the energy expended by the rocket ship is spent getting it off the ground in its first kilometer or two. So I want to give you guys something. I would like to give you the template for how we nearly doubled our fees in the last 4 years. It's basically a simple summary of what I just spoke about. And, I would recommend that if you have a decent proportion of private clients, that you go ahead and you make these changes. And, the template really says that you don't have to do this in 1 year, but you need to do it in 2 to 3 years. So, I just want to say thank you so much. As soon as I've finished speaking, I will just go and drop that particular item in the chat box for you. And I'm finished with 15 seconds to go. So I want to say thank you so much for being here. Look forward to your questions at the end, guys. And I'm just going to unshare and just drop that handout for you right now. All done.
Thanks, Nick. Very impressive. Good start. And great to finish on time. So thank you. So if we now hand over to Jade, who I can't see on the screen, Jade with her new hip. So where are you, Jade?
I am here. You're going to have to take the spotlight off Nick and put it on me.
Very happy to remove that spotlight off Nick. There we are. Add spotlight. There you are, Jade.
Hello. Okay. I'm going to share my screen. Wonderful. We're all good here. You can see me? See my slides? Yeah, Nick, I can only see you. Thumbs up. Wonderful. Okay. Thank you so much for having me. I'm starting my timer too, 12 minutes. If you know me, talking underwater for 12 minutes is very, very hard, but it's also a useless fact I'm going to give you. It's the reason why TED Talks are somewhere between 12 and 15 minutes, because that's when people's concentration span turns off. So I'm going to try and give you my best in 12 minutes. And I'm going to try and revolve a bit of a different concept. And I'm going to, we're obviously talking today about profit and pay. But one of the things that I want to bring to the surface of this conversation is that pay doesn't just mean money. Pay comes in many different forms of currencies. In particular, the three that I'm going to talk about today is obviously money. Money's fantastic. We all want it for different reasons. It doesn't mean we always want more of it. Money can mean stability, it can mean safety, and it can mean security. But also the other currencies that we have is time and energy. So it doesn't always be that we have to pay our team in financial metrics. It can mean that we can give them time, we can give them energy, and that's based upon their work love language. And that's why I want to talk a little bit more about motivators, tell you about the data that I've been collecting over the last month. And in particular, my wheelhouse, which I eat, sleep and breathe, and that is people and culture. I have been researching, studying, and talking to people about how we can create happier workplaces, which I know every single person here on this panel talking to you today, we really have a vested interest in loving allied health, loving our collective siloed industries, but also the people. We are genuinely heart-centered leaders. And so it's really important that we create a workplace that nurtures a positive environment. So how do we get more money? By not losing money, by losing staff. So predominantly, I want to talk a little bit about retention and how important it is to retain staff to increase your profit. Because as soon as we lose somebody, depending on what industry we're in, we're looking at about a $40,000 loss. People leave, patients leave, follow the practitioner, or it takes a long time to build up that client base when somebody leaves. The other thing that I love, which I talked about at the APA conference, which I've been a bit of a worker, I've been getting dirty and working since about the age of 8. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the long-winded story, But for me, my grandpa used to pay me 50 cents a day to work in the garden when I was 8 years old. And one of the things for me is I'm not motivated by money. Surprise, surprise, I don't do anything I do to increase my bank balance every week. My motivation as an 8-year-old at the time was the one thing that I loved. And that was because every Friday I got to go and buy hot chips with my money. And this was my first lesson in recognition and reward. And that's one of the things that I want to highlight before I move forward into the data and how this relates to how we actually pay people. There has to be a reward for effort, but everybody considers that reward for their effort differently. Some people want to be rewarded with money. Some people want to be rewarded with the other different currencies that we have, which is time and energy. So for me, it might have been hot chips as a 10-year-old. Now it's not that. My reward for my effort is very, very different. But one of the things when we look at our Harvard Business Review, there has to be three reasons why people stay in an organization, which is a no-brainer. If we don't deliver these things as clinic owners and as heart-centered leaders, people are going to leave. So whether we like it or not, we have to create career pathways and adequate remuneration. Adequate meaning enough money so that people feel rewarded for the work and the effort that they're putting in. Number two, there has to be a positive culture and a support network, and almost like a chain of autonomy. And, I guess that organizational chart that you see where we've got direct reports or whether we've got a responsibility for other people. And then lastly, purposeful, meaningful work, which is where my beloved Simon Sinek comes in. Now, in 2012, Simon started talking about the why. And now, whilst I don't want to take away from him, I think we also need to speak the generational language that is. And now back then we used to talk about the why and finding the why, but I'll tell you now, if you ask a 22-year-old physiotherapist, what's your why? Of course, they're going to say helping people, which is lovely. We're in a heart service-driven industry where we want to be able to create meaningful change and we want to be able to help people. We all know this. This is how we find ourselves in healthcare. But what I want to do is shift the narrative now to speak the language of what we need for this new generation and moving away from the why to the what and the who. And that comes from motivation. Motivation and emotion come from the same Latin word, meaning to move. If you are not motivated emotionally to do something, you will not be moved to do it. And that includes work. So we have to be emotionally connected to our workplace. And that doesn't always have to be money, but it does have to be the reward for the effort that we're putting in. So if we break it down into a formula, there has to be effort. There has to be a reasonable outcome that we put in. Our staff have to perform. We need to know, and this is where we set KPIs that we talk about all the time, or if you see this many patients, you'll get this much, or if you create these treatment plans, our patients will get these outcomes, and there has to be a reward. But up until now, we've been doing it wrong. We've been assuming that the only carrot that we can dangle and the only reward we can offer must be money. But what I did starting back in 2019 is looking at research within the industry, and I found out that there's actually 7 motivators beyond money. Money is one of them. Pay is really, really important, as we know. It's in our top 3. But the reward also needs to be of value to the person. You can't just assume, well, I've given you an extra $2,000 bonus, therefore you must be happy. What we do is we say, oh my gosh, you're ungrateful, you're entitled, I just gave you $2,000. But if someone's not motivated by money, there's no point giving that up just because you are. So we have to change the why to the what. What matters to them? Why do they get up every day? Why do they do these tedious nominal tasks that is paperwork? So the 7 key motivators, I won't go into them into too much detail, but if we're skimming through each one, we've got money, obviously stability, financial stability, or more money being incentives and bonuses. We've got appreciation from our direct reports, from our bosses and our mentors, people that want to feel seen and valued and validated. Then we've got recognition, which is a little bit more industry and peer-based. We want to be seen by the people that we work with. Then we've got responsibility. This is roles, titles, positions of authority, the ability to make decisions. Some people are driven and motivated by having those titles. Then we've got service, meaningful service. If you ask Oprah, this is the most important one that we can do. And by nature, it makes sense that a lot of allied health professionals are motivated by delivering meaningful service, which is lovely. Then we've got investment. Investment can be in different, this is where energy and time comes in, personal and professional growth, going out, doing a course, going to a seminar, maybe, contributing to a research paper, personally learning and growing. And so that's what we call investment, not necessarily financial investment, but investment in time and investment in energy. And then we've got autonomy, which is the one that's trending at the moment, work-life balance. There. If I hear that one more time, I think I'll stick a fork in my eye, but it's also equally very, very valid. But it's not just about balance, because balance is different for everyone. It is freedom, it's self-determination, being able to work your life and your work life around your home, family life, responsibilities and commitments, which is really, really important right now. And I'll show you the data attached to that. So what I did is I put out a survey. We had over 500 people complete that survey in the last 2 weeks that I could deliver you some data. And this is what it's looking like. Everyone got a report back. Of that list of 7, we found out what our top motivators were so that I can talk to you about trends. Trends from 2022, which is when we were seeing the Great Resignation happen. We'd just come out the back of COVID. One of the things that I wanted to show you back then, mid-COVID, 22 to 23, when we came out of that pandemic, we were seeing these 2 data pairings that were huge, autonomy and money. Autonomy and money, my last 7 resignations in that time period, in the Great Resignation, you can see these data pairings coming to life. The last 7 employees that left Western Region Health all had data pairings of autonomy and money. These were the 2 things we couldn't provide. We couldn't let people work from home when we were mid-pandemic, and it was really hard given that we were cut off at the knees with lockdowns and budgeting and job seeker. We couldn't pay people more, so we found a lot of people leave. We've found a lot of people leave the industry because their motivation and their what matters and their reward for effort wasn't being serviced. So autonomy became resignation. How has the data changed? Well, based upon the validity, and we've got over 85% accuracy of people who are completing the survey right now, which is really nice to be able to deliver. Back in 2022, this is where we're sitting. Autonomy and money, big data pairings, really, really hard to deliver. It made sense that people resigned. This is where we are sitting now. Autonomy, still really, really important. It's taken a little bit of a drop. Money, 9.6%. Now, there's going to be a lot of questions around this, which I'm happy to answer at the end. 1 or 2 things I believe has happened. People have either said, I'm motivated by money and I need to be paid more for you to keep me, and they've already been delivered that. They've already been paid more money, so therefore they are happy. Or they've already left the industry and they've already gone out, had a career change, sought a different job, gone down the aged care route, moved across into, the digital healthcare space. But what's really, really nice to see is that meaningful service has increased. If we look at the change, if we're looking specifically at physiotherapy, meaningful service in 2022 was still quite high, but we can see money has also taken a drop right now. So people aren't needing more money. And that's the point that I want to make. It's not the only carrot we have to deliver, is I want to be paid more money to keep people and therefore be more profitable. We can reward people in different ways. We just need to know how to speak their language. Meaningful work is really important. We need to highlight this. We need to spotlight this right now. Coming into work, being a physio, being an osteo, being a podiatrist, I don't care what it is, you get to contribute to client experiences, patient outcomes, changing people's lives. And we need to reframe this. And the last and most important slide, I'm probably going to go 30 seconds over here. Sorry, James. I've got about 45 seconds left. How do we reframe this? Where are we now? And where do we need to get to be able to retain people, to be able to speak their language and be where they need to be? So if we look at a really, really simple chart, and basically if we want to be able to pay people 3 years out, 100K a year, that's based on about 42 patients a week, working 44 weeks of the year. They're going to have to bill over 200 grand roughly on a 50% commission. However you want to, talk about it, about $110 a consult fee. Here's your breakdown. The last slide that I want to leave you with is how we frame this. I see so many remuneration models that are toxic or that people genuinely sort of get wrong just because they don't know how to frame the language that people need to hear. What if we took that, okay, you want 100K. Let's talk about that as a cost of goods, which everyone talks about in other different industries. This is your cost to me. This is what you want to take home, and this is what you're going to cost me, and this is what you want to earn. Let's call it 100K. Let's lift that. Let's lift the ceiling at 50 patients a week. Let's lift that from a 70% utilization to an 83% utilization. I'm going to give you 6 different ways we can frame the exact same thing, and I want you to sit on this. We can deliver this is 90K plus super plus bonuses. Sounds okay. Doesn't sound like 100K that people want to hear. We can then frame it as 90K plus super plus 20K bonuses if you hit 50 patients. We can reframe it as 90K plus a 40% commission, plus all the other hidden costs that the clinic has to actually pay, but it's actually not seen and not recognized. We can reframe this again as a 100K package plus 45% commissions and allowances for super. We can reframe it again as a 100K package, including super plus 20K bonuses if you hit 50 patients. We can also reframe it, which is where the line that I start to move towards with my staff, a 100K package inclusive of bonuses and 50% of billings. Or lastly, if somebody's motivated by CPD and personal professional development and growth, let's call it a 115K package plus 5K a year towards investment, learning, CPD, plus incentives up to 50% billing. The same amount of money paid out, framed differently. People will only hear the anchor bias that they want to hear. So the way that we frame things when it comes to pay is so important when it comes to retention. But we need to first start by speaking their language. We need to find people's hot chips. We need to look at what really matters to them. We need to go from their why to their what. We need to look at what motivates them, speak their love language, and instead of dangling the carrot that is money all the time, we need to reframe these packages to make them want to hang around. Thank you.
Thanks, Jaden. That was great. I think that extra 3 minutes was worthwhile. Definitely.
Sorry.
That's okay. No, that's okay. So that was awesome. Thank you. I'm really enjoying both presentations. And now we're over to Michael Risk. I've got to find you, Michael, on my screen.
Hello.
Where are you popping up? So I've lost you, Mike. There you are. Let me just.
I'm here. I'm around.
Let me put you on the spotlight there. Great. So hopefully over to you. That's now Michael. So thanks so much for Jade and Nick, and now over to Mick.
Thank you. I am just sharing screen. I'm a bit stuck with my Zoom boxes. Here we go. All right. Thanks. Thank you, Jade and Nick. That was bloody awesome. I attended Nick's webinar last week and already made 2 pretty significant changes. The learning for me is like close your implementation time. So if there's anything you hear from today, see if you can roll it out quickly. Maybe that's Nick's fee increase or doing Jade's key motivators. Jade's key motivators really changed the game for me because I was really focused on providing my team with more money, and a lot of them didn't need that, which was awesome. I'm going to talk to you today about clinic killers, and the title is how to get your 0 to 6 year therapists booking like the owner, reduce your time and stress, and make 100K per therapist more. So I have some questions for you. I want you to go to the Zoom chat. Do you have therapists who are 0 to 6 years out in your team currently? Just pop yes or no in the Zoom chat. Great. The 0 to 6 years will be relevant in a moment. I'm going to explain why 6 years is a key, most of you. Okay, do you plan to hire in the next 2 years? All of them are 0 to 6 years out. Okay, good. Good luck finding any questions that were back there now. Do you have anyone in your team who doesn't rebook as well as they could or as well as the owner? All right. So that's what today's focused on. This is what I've probably spent 12 years of my physio career since becoming an owner looking at. So the problem is we're oversaturated. There's lots of physios on every corner. There's also osteo, chiro, podiatrists who can all overlap in their services. And we're just competing for new patients on an AdWords budget or whoever's got the best marketing strategy at the time. We need to actually retain our clients better. And what would that look like if all of our therapists could rebook like the owner? So just to highlight the size of this problem, I want you guys to all grab your calculator out right now on your phone, and you're going to do this equation. How many new clients does a therapist in your clinic see? So for me, on average, it's 5. So I'm just going to type in 5 in my calculator. Let's do 46 weeks in a working year. So I go 5 times 46. Let's do your average consult, which is $110 for me. And let's say that we can help your therapists see every client 2 more times. So I'm going to times it by 2. So what I get is a $50,600 problem per therapist who's not booking like the owner. And that's only if we increase their client retention by 2. If we increase their client retention by 4, I've got balloons, that's $100K per therapist. If you have 4 therapists like that, that's $400K. So if you do the things in this presentation, you have a potential upside of 2, 3, $400K. So that's the size of this problem that we're talking about today, which is your therapists not rebooking well. Why did this happen? This is something that I think is really interesting and something I think we don't think about a lot as owners. If you have a grad who started this year in 2024, 2 years of their degree was COVID, assuming they did a 4 or 5 year degree. If you have a first year therapist who started last year in 2023, 2 years of their degree was COVID. If you have a second year therapist who started in 2022, 2 years of their degree, including their practical year, was COVID. If you have a third year therapist who started in 2021, their last year of uni and their first year of practicing was COVID. If you have a fourth year therapist who started in 2020, their first 2 years being a physio was COVID. If you have a fifth year therapist started in 2019, their second and third year of their practice was COVID. And if you have a sixth year therapist who started in 2018, their third and fourth year of their practice was COVID. Now, a lot of us just think COVID was a 2-year thing. But imagine that 0 to 6 years of your therapists have had a significant and the most important part of their training be impacted by hands-off, non-contact at uni, no placements, or worse, their first 2 years of development, there was no live courses, there was less of us because we were distracted by it. And I think that's the why. I think that's why the 0 to 6 year therapists are very different to us. And that's not really their fault. They had more social media, they had more stress and anxiety, they had more financial insecurity, and they had the most important time of their career without live courses and with hands-off. I remember how many live courses I did in my first 3 years, and I just think what type of therapist I would be if I didn't do that. Or imagine if you didn't get that one placement that you really loved that transformed your love for the profession because COVID had hit. So COVID is not just a 2-year problem. This has impacted all of your therapists 0 to 6 years out. And sometimes we forget that impact. And that's not even speaking about the attention that we could give to those 0 to 6 year therapists, because I know I gave a lot less attention to my therapists during that 2-year window. So it's no wonder that our young health professionals aren't as good and struggle to value themselves and struggle to value their hands. They're not as upskilled, and then therefore they can't retain clients. And that's what creates the gap between, say, the seniors PVA and the newer therapist PVA, which can be a $50,000 to $100,000 problem per clinician. So how do we fix it? I'm going to go through 10 steps here on how we fix this. And I'm just checking the comments. Okay, AI assistant. Step 1 is a mindset. I credit Nick to a lot of this, actually. I've heard him say this a few times, but you get what you ask for and you get what you train for. So have we actually asked for and trained our therapists to rebook like us? And that could be just explicitly saying it. I wonder how many of us explicitly have said, these are our standards around how we see our clients. Step 2 is your training. I want you to take a moment now and think about, in your interview, in your induction, in your initial trainings, how much do you talk about how their senior therapists or how our senior therapists rebook? Like, why is my PVA 12? What does that look like? What's my treatment planning like? The more explicit you are about this and the more you ask for it, your younger therapists will adapt quickly. It is extremely difficult to take therapists who are now 6 and 7 years out and change them. But if you can get this right from the start, you won't have that problem. Step 3 is empathy and acknowledging this. A lot of people don't want to talk about COVID anymore. I think we need to acknowledge, validate, and prescribe. I wonder how many of your 6-year therapists have actually thought about that. Have you actually kind of said, hey, your first 2 years as a physio, you didn't do a live course because of COVID. That must have had an impact, right? Or just like describe that, talk about that and what that might mean. That's not a 2-year delay to development. That's like a 10-year delay, because those first 2 years as a health professional are huge. That's where you do the most courses and you're really soaking it in. So I think we should still speak to how that impacted our certain therapists. And I think we need to validate and then provide a prescription, which is live courses for you are going to be really important. Getting that extra hands-on session per week with your senior physio is going to be really important. Sorry if I keep saying physio. That's my native language. We're not cool anymore. Most of us on this webinar, there is a significant generational difference. And I know I left my first private practice because it was the first year that Facebook came out. And I'm like, I don't want to be at a practice who isn't excited about this technology to share how good physio can be with the world. And like my owners who are in their 60s are looking at me going, why are you leaving over Facebook? Difference. There's huge generational differences, but we have to speak their values and we have to speak their language. Their language is helping people. It is autonomy. It is a 4-day work week. It is money. We can't come at them with PVA talk. So I know what I'm talking to as owner to owner is PVA, but I'm going to show you how we talk about that differently. We don't actually specifically talk about PVA. We have to be in the know about all the stuff they're following. The stuff they're following is the BPS model, the web of determinants, the Bunsley common sense model. If you don't know this literature, this is what's really hard for us as owners. We shouldn't be in the literature anymore, but we might have a clinical lead that needs to be across this. I talk about these newer papers that younger therapists are all across and often lean on as an excuse not to see someone. But if you know those papers, you're meeting them where they are, you're coming to their level and you're speaking their language, and you don't sound like an old washed up owner anymore. You're talking about the latest pain science papers from 2019 and 2022. But I talk about those papers in a way that's like, this is why we need to see people more. Younger therapists will talk about these papers as why we need to see someone less. So this is a real skill for you or your clinical lead to understand some of the languages and some of the models that are very different to what we learned at uni 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Step 6 is the numbers. Once you've done those first 5 steps, we need to acknowledge, validate, understand that they're different, get them to live courses. We can't just talk about numbers. We have to ask for their permission. Is it okay if in our fortnightly review or our quarterly review, I just spend the first 2 or 3 minutes or the last 2 or 3 minutes talking about the scoreboard, about the numbers? Because it is important to us as a clinic, and it's going to help you with your development, your courses, the equipment we can buy, and that helps patients when our clinic looks nice and we've got the latest gear. So we need to ask the permission, and then we need to show them the numbers. You need to be vulnerable and transparent. I will show my team members the percentages in a P&L and say, this is how we ran this year. The elephant in the room is speaking to over-servicing and under-servicing. So we have these conversations a lot. And again, this is the younger therapist language. They really think about over-service and under-service a hell of a lot. So I talk about it as a spectrum. Hey, this is different for every clinic owner on this call, but there are some clinics that rightly or wrongly see someone once a week for 52 weeks. That might be you, and that's okay. So let's talk about that. For us, our average PVA is around that 12 to 14. And this is where we would like to sit. I think seeing someone 3 to 5 times is under-servicing. Let's have that open, honest conversation with our team members because they think about that a lot. I measure it often. So when I speak about talking about it in the interview, in your induction and in the training, I would then tie a 3 and 6 month probation to that. And we come back and measure it in a monthly or fortnightly performance. And it'll just be something like, hey, here's your rebooking rate, here's your percentages, but let's talk more about the evidence and the clinical side. This has been a big one. The bias of therapists who are 0 to 6 years out. Think about a 27-year-old who $100 and $200 a week is a hell of a lot of money. They're renting. They will never be able to afford a house and they've got 100K HECS debt. But our patients are not that person, is not that person. I want you to reflect to your team that our ideal clients, $100 to $200 a week often isn't life-changing for them. They often have had 2 incomes, or both kids are moved out, or they've got super, or they're retiring, or they've got a couple million in property equity, and they're in really good health insurance. And so we have to contrast, sometimes there's a financial bias and our patients are more than willing to pay for our service. And it's more of a reflection that the clinicians don't value themselves. And my last tip is, this can't come from mum and dad. So when you talk about all this stuff and linking the evidence to it and people's PVA, often it just doesn't land well when it comes from the owner. Often it needs to come from someone external. So this is what I do. I'm going to drop a link for you in the chat, and I would love you guys to jump on that link and bookmark it. And this is exactly what my course does. I will take you and your team through this with a fortnightly call, and I also have a fortnightly call for owners and leaders. And we go through the numbers, we go through financial bias, we go through communication, we go through valuing yourself. So if that's something you'd be interested in, or you answered yes to those 0 to 6 year clinicians who aren't rebooking well, that's something I'd love to help you guys with. I think I am finished. Thank you, everyone. Sorry, I went really fast.
Yeah, that was fantastic, Michael. Like the other two, thanks so much. I'm just going to shift the spotlight, sounds weird, to myself. So just give me a moment. It's amazing how quickly 12 minutes go, that's for sure. Okay, so I'll just pull up my slides. Excuse me. And put my timer on. Sorry, I'm just trying to juggle a few administrative stuff that I'm getting as well.
Try and spotlight yourself again, James.
I'm not being spotlighted? Okay, thanks. How's that?
That's good.
Yep, looks
Okay,
great.
we're good. Beautiful, thank you. So I am at this hopefully will time very much with what we've been hearing. And I want to talk about what I think is probably the most important, one of the ones that's most durable and sustainable ways to actually be able to pay your staff more while you actually win as well. Because every time somebody wants a bigger cut of the pie, to me, unless you make that pie larger, it's going to be a win-lose. And to me, the thing that drove my practices was word of mouth. 3/4 of our patients came from word of mouth, and it was absolutely intentional because when you've got word of mouth referrals, you create durability in your business. You have 99 to 100 different referrers referring 150 patients, which is what we were getting a month in each of our practices. It removed the fickleness of GPs, who you could have one bad experience and you've lost that GP. You know, the danger, as we always hear in business, is number one. So the more that we actually have a spread of referrals, the better. But our referrals were very much on word of mouth, but we knew that we'd have 100 or so referring, then we would grow. And I just want to point out, for both the practice owners and any of the physios, I know there's some physios here listening as well, you know, it varies, the private consult. This is based on a 30-minute consult, but I know practices that charge a lot more than this, and there's some that charge less than this. But this is just some simple mathematics. If you had a really good week, you know, 60 patients a week, it obviously could be less than this, more than this, but that's what, 12 patients a day. And if you compare that, if you were seeing 50-50, and I hope none of your practices have to do this, but if you were seeing half DVA, half Medicare, your income as your generation, you generate 7,200 a week versus just shy of 4,000 with 50-50 mix of the others. And if you're paid 40% plus super, I'm having 40% as a commission plus super, so this is without super, you can see the massive difference. And your annual salary, if you were seeing 12 patients and you were charging 120 a consult and seeing 60, you'd be 150K. Now, obviously, there can be less than this, and I know this is just to show the stark difference versus 82K for the same amount of work. And in fact, I'd argue, and I think everybody who's involved in seeing DVA, Medicare, even workers' compensation, that you're earning far less per patient, and yet the work you're doing is so much more complex, and there's so much more administrative work. And yet there's a massive shortfall. For profit, yeah, based on the average profit, now some practices do better than this, some earn a lot less than this. It's a 10%. So if you take 10% of that profit, again, it's massive. If you employ 5 clinicians, look at the difference of the profit you generate for the practice just on this alone. Now, this is profit. So that makes a big difference when your profit might be your actual own salary as the employer. So to me, it's pretty straightforward. Get more and more clients referring their friends and family. And so you have to see less of DVA and Medicare. And it's got to be done at the right time. Nick talked about that a lot before. You know, when do you drop off things? When do you start implementing gaps with your Medicare? When do you decide, if you are going to decide not to see Veterans Affairs like I have now? But you know, you've got to do this at the right time, but you can see the stark difference that it can do. And this is, as I said, this is the key to me, is you don't have to be a salesperson at all. They're better paying clients. They do all the work for you. They refer their friends and family. And so it's so much easier. A patient comes in with a positive expectation. They're coming in expecting a certain style of treatment, which hopefully is aimed, and we'll share with you what our clients want in a moment. But they're looking for usually long-term solutions. And they come in with an expectation that you're going to help them. So they're much more likely to follow your recommendations as well, which is so much easier. You don't have to sell yourself every time that you're somebody who can help them, because their friend or family's done that for you. And so really quick thing on seizing that opportunity. We used to seize the opportunity in my practices with a very simple card. But what we would do is never just ask everybody, do you know somebody who could refer to you? We seized on opportunities. So many physios are almost humble or embarrassed when a patient says, oh, look, you know, James, I've heard you're really good at treating necks or knees. You know, I wonder if you could see my friend or my cousin or my partner. And a lot of physios just say, yeah, sure. They don't seize on the opportunity and say, I'd love to see your friend or family, whoever it is, you know, because that's how we thrive. And to me, it's never a sales pitch when you actually say to them, when they've initiated the discussion, it's seizing those opportunities, because when you do great work with your patients, you get these opportunities. And rather than just sort of brushing them away, which can often make the patient feel like, oh, maybe they're too busy, or maybe they don't want to see my friend or family, by saying we'd love to, it just opens it up. We would give them something written, and we'd say who it was referred by so we could track them. We didn't gift the patient anything who was referring, because that's not what they were referred for. Also, you're probably going to go down in trouble with the with APRA as well. But we'd also make it just so much easier for them to actually do that. So how do you get the referral? That's the most important thing in my time in the last 5 minutes I want to discuss, is you've got to deliver 9 or 10 out of 10 out of experiences every time you see a client. If you deliver competency, if you deliver a good result, there's an old saying, good's the enemy of great. The curse of competence. It's so true. I'll show you statistics from our 26,000 patient sample that I was involved in, that satisfaction leads to failure. If you want to be a physio, a practice that does a good job, you are going to go backwards. And it's not that much harder to go from being a good clinician, a good practice, to a great practice. This is something I talk about with a lot of the teams I mentor with, and there are 3 zones, and these are the zones we want to get people who are who are just satisfied up to become loyal clients. Because you did exactly what they expected, but nothing more, you're at risk to another physio, chiro, remedial therapist, EP, osteo, whoever is your competitor, another physio, it doesn't matter. There's nothing that makes you stand out. And so they're much likely to leave. And I'll show you the statistics. This is how many clients who actually said that they gave us a 9 or 10 out of 10, which was a loyal client, or rated us 7 or 8 or out of 10 on the what we call the Net Promoter Score, which is how likely are you to refer a friend or family to my practice. When a patient gave us a 7 or 8 out of 10 score, so they were happy with what they got. They were satisfied. 31% only ever walked back into our practice again. So basically, if you deliver a good outcome to your client and a good experience, you are leaving 69% of your patients, this is not a small sample, at risk of never walking back in your practice again. Look at the difference. You go to 9 out of 10 and 10 out of 10 when somebody rates you. 90% of those clients who gave us that score actually returned after they gave us this score for care they're already receiving or for new care within the next 12 months. I mean, it's pretty stark, the difference. So if you want to get repeat business of word of mouth private patients, which pay so much better, you can't deliver good outcomes. You got to deliver great, thrilling experiences. And this is the referrals. We looked at, did they refer? Those who gave us a 9 or 10 out of 10, 3/4 of them did refer, on average 1.8 patients per year. Satisfied clients, 1 and 2, 1.3 patients each. So if you do the maths, you can see if you're getting 90% of clients referring to you, coming back, saying they love you, coming back, you've got durability. Then if they're actually referring nearly 2 patients each, 3/4 of them referring nearly 2 patients each, that snowball effect is how you get huge numbers for your word of mouth and those patients who pay better, and it makes it so much easier in your work. So the last thing I want to talk about is the qualitative reasons. These are, we did 5 surveys, sorry. And these were the keys to growing word of mouth. This is how the patients, why the patients loved what we did. This is the qualitative research we got. They want pain relief rapidly. So you've got to, you can't muck about, you've got to make an impact as soon as possible within 3 visits. But they also, on the other side of the fence, they also want long-term solutions to reduce recurrence. They want plans. Our patients told us they want plans. If your staff are pushing back against plans being a sales job, they're not listening to this research and a massive amount of research. They want a clear and simple plan, and they want it written down. They've told us that is one of the reasons they want it written down, because so many practices get pushed back that, oh, it feels like a sales job. If it's what a patient wants, surely that's what you want to give them. Your support team, I can't overestimate how important your support team are. And these are the things that our clients said what separated us. The greeting, the remembering the name, being happy and smiling, feeling welcomed. And another thing that I get pushed back in is about following up clients. Clients love being followed up when they're no longer seeing you. But these are clients, it's too much time. It's not a patient. All patients aren't the same. Clients are people you've built a therapeutic alliance with. They love being followed up. If you saw a client once, a patient once, they never came back, those calls are horrible to make. They're difficult to make and they're very rarely successful. But clients who actually were clients who had a therapeutic alliance love the follow-up. Again, I say this because this is what our patients told us. It's not what I was saying as a business person. They want to be seen as experts. So they want to know really clearly what's wrong with me, how long is it going to take. We keep hearing that in research, and it is what clients want as well. And the last one is they crave consistency. Block booking, one of the other things that often gets pushed back, it creates loyalty. Clients love seeing the same clinician. They hate chopping and changing. And if you're going to be undertreating simply because you can't fit them in, then that's a problem with your systems. You need to book them. You need to book them well ahead so they can actually see the same clinician every time. They also want times that suit them. And not having to juggle around your busy schedule, they want times that suit them. And the further you can book out, the more they're going to pick times that suit them. So again, you're not going to lose them to cancelling when they get the reminder and they realize, oh gosh, yeah, I've got to get a babysitter. This is going to be too hard. And also, if they got bookings, block bookings ahead, if they cancel one, you maintain momentum. At the very least, they've got another appointment. It's not a guesswork from the receptionist, not a guesswork from the patient about when to come back. It's just so much easier. And the last thing on that is that there is real positive psychology. When you have a patient that you can actually see, you booked for 3 weeks, twice a week, and you get to the second week and they're doing so well, they don't really need that second appointment next week. The power of saying that to a patient, you say to the patient, look, I thought you'd need 3 times twice a week. Twice a week for 3 weeks. You know what, you're doing so well. I reckon we can cancel one of those and drop it down to once a week. That has a huge change in optimism for the client, reducing their fear and making them feel optimistic about the future. So I wanted to touch upon some real key things, because this is not me saying, this is not me saying it. This was from 26,000 patients who told us that. I hope that was useful, and I'm really excited how Shane's going to be able to move forward with this one. So thank you, everyone. I'll send you these slides in a PDF too. Over to Shane. Just excuse me while I swap over from a presenter to a organizer again. Let's find you, Shane. If you want to talk up, I'll be able to find you.
Just here, mate.
Oh, where are you? This is cutting into your time, Shane. No, I'm only joking. Just give me a second. Okay. Hopefully you're coming up now.
I'll just need you to stop sharing your screen. Yeah.
Yep. Is it still coming in?
No, we're good.
Good now?
We're good. Yeah. You guys can see that okay?
Yep.
I think so. So, hi everyone, I'm Shane. I'm probably a bit nearer on the scene than some of these guys. And the first thing I want to say, taking a leaf straight out of Jade Scott's book, is gratitude. I feel really privileged to be up here with some people I've really idolized over the years when I was a practice owner. So thank you for welcoming me. I just wanted to say that if there were 4 people I could choose who've supported me over the last 18 months, it's literally the last 4 people who've just spoken. So it's really cool to be part of this. And I'm just going to share something in the group chat. Hopefully that comes through. And start my timer as well. Yeah, so we're all good. So I'm going to be talking about client experience, and really it's finishing off this section which James has alluded to. And there's nothing complex in what I'm going to be presenting. It's all actionable stuff that I think is really easy. But honestly, I think a lot of business is very much about doing the basics really, really well. Where this presentation comes from, so this is my profits program, and it's just over here in the corner where I teach people to attract engaged clients, to pay fair wages, and then to eventually confidently raise prices. And I think client experience is the key aspect to allow us to raise those prices to balance this equation. As an owner, easily my biggest point of frustration was witnessing poor service from practitioners or poor service from admin staff. I have a lot of tolerance for people who are learning the craft of physiotherapy. I don't expect young therapists to be able to execute extremely well on the clinical aspects, but I've never had a lot of tolerance for people not greeting patients well, not keeping a tidy room, all of the service standards, which I think just you can learn that your first day on the job, and I think people need to. I think we all want clients to come through and receive brilliant care and exceptional service in our practices. And I think the mistake owners make here is only worrying about the clinical aspect of that care. We spend probably 80% of the time worrying about clinical care and 20% worrying about everything else, when in fact, I think patient experience, their entire experience is the other way around. And I'm going to show you why you should obsess over client experience. So without further ado, let's talk about CX baby. So that's my early 90s reference. And here's some nice 1990s style clip art from the 10 key service moments, which we're going to go through now. So moment number one. So again, none of this is mind blowing, but when a new client books in, so if someone comes through an online booking, so I did a webinar on this last month, just how we can optimize that process to get rid of the clunkiness through it. But the key thing with an online booking is that we call the patient and make sure they have booked with the right practitioner. They know where we are, they know the time point, so that, and also that they know to come early to fill in consent forms and whatnot, so that we can hit the ground running as soon as they get to our practice. It's really critical because nothing throws therapists off more than patients being late or not having the right information to deal with. So trying to get this stuff organized at the front end is really, really important. Similarly, if they come with a phone call, if someone walks into your practice, as long as they know how to get home, they should know how to get back to where you are. But there's an opportunity to get them to fill in whatever forms and whatnot whilst they're there, just again, to smooth out that process. As James just said, it's so important when a client arrives in your practice that they're greeted with a warm greeting. A warm and friendly greeting can actually make such a difference in someone's day. And it acts as a way of just changing the vibe. Most of us are just running around on our phones and racing through life these days, and having someone, you know, who knows your name, who knows you're coming in and is expecting you, can be enough to give you a nice warm feeling. So ideally the admin stand up, they greet the patient, they sit them down. And again, you know, a really clunky part of coming in for appointments, we've got to get consent forms filled out. We can smooth this out through the things I spoke about earlier. I think sometimes admin can be really helpful. I had an admin who used to help, especially with older patients, just to get these consent forms filled in and whatnot. But there's also an opportunity just to enhance client experience. We can offer teas and coffees. But again, having good conversation, breaking that cycle. I hate seeing people sitting in the waiting room just doom scrolling, waiting for their therapist. It's not a medical clinic. We want the experience to be different. And we want people coming out of their shell a little bit in our waiting room so they're ready for their appointment. And I think this next phase is actually really, really critical. This is where your admin basically acting as a conduit on behalf of the patient, introduce them to the therapist. And I frame this as essentially when you go to a restaurant, you're probably not going to leave a tip at a restaurant when the front of house staff tell you, oh yeah, your table's way down the back there, just behind that corner there, rather than walk you over to your table. And I think in medical, especially, how often do GPs, they call your name out, you've been waiting there for 20 minutes, before you can look up, the doctor's just, you know, wandered off around the corner and you don't even know where you're going. So I think what we can do in the allied health space is really elevate this aspect, and it really now sets the tone for a great appointment. Now, I'm not here at all to tell you how to do what you do in the room, but again, as James was talking about, and to reiterate, it needs to be client-centered. That's the be-all and end-all of it. It needs to be client-centered because we need our clients to get what they've come in for. And the opportunity we have here is to deliver robust treatment plans. And above all else, I think the main thing people want, we can't expect that everyone's just going to be out of pain after their first session, but the main thing people do want is to know that there is a plan. There is a plan and a sequence to go through. So again, it's really important that our practitioners can execute on that aspect of it. And noting this is only one slide, is what happens in the room here. The next phase, I feel like everything in this process has been building to this moment. And I think for people, especially if you're paying for advertising, nowadays it's expensive. We've got to get this person from entering our clinic through our appointment all the way to the front desk, feeling brilliant about themselves, so that we can actually get them converted into future appointments. And again, the opportunity here is to block book, it's to upsell other services. If you've got a nice clinic, I would encourage you to make sure your practitioners actually walk people around the clinic, because sometimes they only see the treatment room, they miss, you know, the expensive gym equipment and everything you've paid, you know, tens, if not hundreds of thousands for. It's worth it just to give them that bit of a wow experience. Because at the end of end of this, we're going to be asking them for their money, and we're also going to be asking them to make a commitment towards us. So I think that's a really critical phase for obvious reasons. The next point, I don't think many clinics do this, and I think if there's one thing you're going to start doing from today, it's this. It's offering something, a point of reciprocation. So a gift. It can be as easy as, a coffee from the cafe that's across the road, who also happen to be the people who, have all your flyers and business cards, because you've got a nice reciprocal relationship with them as well. That'll cost you. I mean, when I was running my clinic, it cost me sort of $3.50, $4, but coffees are now nearly $6. So you might have to put your price up by $6 just to implement that. But even if it's a piece of merchandise, a spiky ball, just something to say thank you for attending our practice can leave your patients feeling really good about themselves. And the main reason we want to give something at this moment is we're now going to ask for something in return. And the thing I ask for is feedback. We want to know at this point in time, how was your entire experience? How was your experience from coming in with our reception team to seeing the practitioner and whatnot? And as James was saying, like, taking a net promoter score is so, so important. And it doesn't have to be complicated. I think the simplest things can work. You can do this manually if you really want to, and just get your receptionist to write a number down from your clients. But the question is, out of 10, how likely are you to refer a friend to us? And I think it's really important that we capture this at this point. I think it's very hard to capture NPS from the majority of your clients through emails and text message follow-ups. I think the response rates are really poor. So I would encourage you to try and capture it on the day at the time itself, because that's the most up-to-date feedback. The next thing we want to do is ensure that there's a follow-up phone call. So our admin are calling them the next day, and we're using this as an opportunity to deepen the relationship between our client experience or our admin team. We can upsell services, but we also want to use this as a chance to risk mitigate, because one of the most common complaints is soreness post-treatment. If you've got a young team of practitioners and you're worried that they don't follow people up enough, like, some of this stuff can really help to feed back into that cycle. It's something your admin can get good at, is responding to those questions with something along the lines of, would you like me to get Shane to call you? And as a physio, if any of my patients were sore and had mentioned it to admin, I'd be on the phone to them in the first gap I got to make sure everything was okay. And it presents an opportunity to get them back in for a follow-up session sooner if need be. But that's a really important stopgap, I think. And finally, the bane of everybody's existence is recalls. And I don't know if you can really trust your therapist to do this consistently. Your top performers will probably do this, but I think it's worth having a system like an automated email that goes out if someone hasn't been in for 2 weeks, to try and just re-loop them back in. You can do it with SMS. You can offer, $10 off your next appointment or something, just to try and reactivate people. But it's a really key aspect, and it shows people that you care as much as anything. You're not just there for a one-off session. So the take-home message from my talk today is that client experience is so much more than what happens in the room, and everyone can deliver 10 out of 10 client experience. But for those who do, you can absolutely charge substantially more, and that will hit your profits, and that will allow you to pay your therapist more as well. So I think this is a really understated aspect of us from a focus perspective. So if you do want to learn more, you can check out my profits program as well. This is a 12-week digital course, which is ideal for businesses under $1 million. And I've got my next cohort launching on October 7th. So I'll leave a little link in the comments now as well. And I think I've got 25 seconds to go. So pretty happy with that.
That was fantastic, Shane, and thanks for keeping to time, unlike myself and a couple of others. So that was fantastic. Firstly, I just want to say thank you to all the speakers who've hopefully given you lots to take in. It is being recorded. We're making that an ongoing joke because we've been asked that so many times. So you will get access to the recording as well. So I'm hoping that this is something you can now go back over, listen to all of your to all the people in the future in your team, and actually you can use this for future reference as well. So those who couldn't attend obviously going to get a copy, but those of you who have attended will get it. Now, there is a lot of comments in the notes, which is great. Some of them are going to be a bit hard for me to trawl through because there's a lot of comments, which were really great comments, useful comments from everybody in there. I would find it much easier if people have got questions, just to unmute yourself and ask the question. We've still got another 15, 16 minutes. So we have got a list of other questions that we got externally, but I'd much prefer them to be from you guys first. So over to you guys. What questions maybe that weren't answered in the chat that we haven't got to, or questions that you've got for all of us right now? So please unmute yourself if you have got something to ask. I'd be surprised if out of 77 people, there's not somebody's got a question. Okay.
James, could I ask a question?
Absolutely, please do.
So I was just wondering, I've loved everyone's courses so far, which I've looked up both of them already. I was just wondering with regards to, because Shane's just been chatting about sort of the front end and how we have that client experience. I was recently thinking of redoing this with my admin because we have now a completely new team. Is there anyone that's running this so that someone externally could run this to my admin team? Because I feel like if I run it, it needs to come from someone else really, rather than someone feeling like I'm pushing.
Who'd like to? The answer is definitely yes. I'm happy to answer, but perhaps I've got Michael, Nick's going yes. So Mick, do you want to unmute? If I can have the speakers unmute themselves, that would be great, just so we can answer these questions. Mick, have you got somebody in mind?
I was going to say Shane, because I think he does a lot of work on the client experience. And I think having someone actually like Shane to run through your client experience like a patient and then train your admin is a great idea. Do you have any input, Shane?
It's not actually something I've thought about doing before, but yeah, it's something I can definitely do for you. I do think there is a very strong role for the owner themselves, like bringing some passion around what happens at the admin desk, because I think that's an area we sometimes neglect, and ensuring that our administrative team feel as part of the process as everybody else. And we all know what most of our staff want is more time with their owner, and that includes our admin as well. So sometimes, as much as like definitely it's worth doing both, I think owners need to invest with their front of house staff as well.
Jade?
Yes, I run a course, full day course, Good to Great in private practice, and you're the first to hear it, but Good to Great in Admin Excellence will be launching next year, which is a full 1 day for all of your admin teams, practice managers. We have a huge number of practice managers and admin come through our leadership program as well. They're welcome to come to all 4 courses. Anyone who's on this call who's been to those, it's valuable for anyone, whether you're a practice owner, whether you're a team lead, whether you're looking to be an emerging leader in an organisation. But yes, Good to Great in Admin Excellence early next year, somewhere between January and March. It's a full day course. The first one's going to be delivered live over Zoom rather than face-to-face in Melbourne, just so that I can capture a lot of people, and then it'll be moved to an online course. So yeah, exciting. Great, thanks.
Mick, I just trying to flick through at the same time, but you're sort of helping me with the questions there. I saw you. Are there questions there that you think you could bring up?
Yeah, Caleb asked how to best get PVA, specifically in Clinico, but it's the same for any software really. Clinico has a report called the performance report, and you would run that over the period that you want to measure. I normally look at it over 3, 6, and 12 months. PVA is pretty simple. I'd be interested if you guys do it differently, but we just get total patients for a given period divided by new clients for a given period, and that'll tell me roughly how often they saw a new client. Do you guys do that any differently, Nick or James or Shane? Jade?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
sounds spot on.
It is. I do. We did two key things that I'd add to it is we did PPVA, not PVA. So private patient visit average, because that's when patients are paying for care, and that completely, that's when the rubber hits the road. You can be in a very workers' compensation environment and have artificially high PVAs and think you're doing really well. Conversely, if you're seeing a lot of Medicare, your PVA is going to be low, and that's often out of your control as well. So for me, PPVA is when patients are paying, far more useful in my view. The other thing I'd say is we looked at a rolling 12 months. The reason being it depends on what your model is. Our model was optimal lifelong musculoskeletal health. So for us, it was about lifelong care. So 12 months was far more important than just the short term. We would actually look at it over 12 months and not over 3 or 6 months. It was far more useful for us to see that clients came back in for repeat care if they had a new problem, and also if they were following that journey. And that often was far longer than 3 months. So for us, 3 and 6 months was less useful.
Can I just say one thing on that too? Depending on the different software you use, if you're measuring PVA over a long period of time, it's worth considering whether you're dividing the number of episodes by the number of individuals or by the number of new episodes of care. Because like if you're a super experienced practitioner, your PVA is going to be like 1 million because you're seeing very, very few actual new clients, but those past clients are coming for new episodes of care. So it's not always easy to differentiate that. But my point is regarding if you're measuring it, you might have to take yourself out of the equation as the owner if you've got 10 years worth of historical stats, just so you don't have your team looking at your stuff and sort of aspiring to something that's sort of almost a little bit false. Like in my last 2 years, I'd see 3 new clients a year, but they were people, I'd see heaps of new episodes. So it was just false data.
Good point. Nick?
Yeah, really good points. I'd actually message your clinic software's help chat. They all have one now, and just describe very specifically what you want, and they will all give it to you, mentioning what Nick said, like you want new cases. The other thing you can just crudely do right now, which I do with newer therapists, is just go back in the diary 4 to 6 weeks and look at the new private clients that have come in and just see if they're still in the diary today and what the rebooking pattern was like. And that's something I still do for new therapists, is just go back a month. And a lot of newer therapists will only see someone 3 or 4 times, and they won't be in your diary 2 months ahead of time. So that's a really crude way to do it, but still really valuable.
Great, thanks, Nick. I see there's a question for Jade, and I'm sorry, were there any questions verbally before we go on to some ones that I can see on the side again? Okay, we got one for you, Jade, and I'm sorry these are out of order, from Jordan, is basically saying that industry data this month shows autonomy and meaningful service being the highest motivators for internal staff desires. What exactly can we do as business owners to implement improvements in those 2 categories? What are examples of improving this space?
Yeah, great question. It's good to understand the love language and find out what it is, but if you don't know how to interpret and actually implement it, it becomes really hard. So question number 1, autonomy, becomes one of 2 things. It's just recognizing and highlighting what it is that motivates them and what matters to them and what their what is. If it is autonomy, and yet they're a brand new grad who wants Saturdays off, and you can't deliver that right now, then you have to have an opportunity to explain why you can't do it and find a path forward to get to that. So, hey, this is what I'm hearing. It's autonomy that motivates you. What does that mean for you? Firstly, because autonomy is very different for everyone. Work-life balance is different for everyone. So autonomy, and this is where I got it really wrong as an example, we had one guy who was happy to work Saturdays, but all he wanted was Mondays off so that he could go to his big Greek family dinner. And we kept putting him on Mondays. And he was getting really, really disappointed. His hot chips was that he had for the last 7 years spent Monday nights with his big Greek family. So he said, Jade, that's all I need. And I said, effective immediately, you have Mondays off. I'm swapping your day off to Wednesday and you can have Monday. He went from a happiness score from 6 out of 10 to 9 by that one simple change. Autonomy for him, what mattered to him was spending time with his family. It was so easy and it was it was like a superpower. When it comes to something like meaningful service, again, it's different for everyone. That could be, okay, meaningful service matters to you. Client outcomes matters to you. Let's champion when you get a 5-star Google review. Let's have you present a case where you change somebody's life to the whole team. Let's sit down in the staff room and tell me why coming into work every day and doing what you do every day matters. Get them talking about what it is that matters. So firstly, ask the question, when you're using the Key Motivators tool, there's a whole lot of resources that we move from performance reviews to engagement reviews. What's motivating you? What's engaging you? And so let's actually start with the conversation. The more we talk about things, the more dopamine gets released because the more grateful we are to be doing that job. And we know that when dopamine is released, when gratitude enlists, then we become happier in the workplace, which means we stay. And when they stay, we profit.
Jade, can I help with that off the back of you for Jordan? Something that worked well, because we've been using Jade's Key Motivators for a while with the meaningful service. Every clinician, we are constantly going to them, Jordan, and talking about what clients they like to treat and implementing specific marketing campaigns to see more of the exact clients they want to treat. So their meaningful service gets amplified. And we do focus more on that for the therapists that have meaningful service as one of their top 2 to 3 motivators.
That's great, guys. The question I got from the privately, but it's worth sharing with everyone, is how do you frame patients to book in 8 to 12 sessions in the first appointment? I found that as a new grad that I lose patients from the first session when I'm trying to convert them to a full plan. It's a good question, because the first thing is, I'll add is that we gave our treatment plans at visit 3, not visit 1. Visit 1, we give a quick, like, this is what's wrong. This is what we think is wrong. This is roughly how long it's going to take. This is what we can do to help you. And this is what you can do to help yourself with self-management. We did it at visit 3 because a lot of young physios, and in fact, a lot of physios and a lot of clinicians, sometimes you need 2 or 3 visits to get a real handle on the client, particularly if they're complex. And so visit 3 is early enough in their care still that if they're still going to have some pain, still going to be in the early stages of their care, and we can deliver a treatment plan optimally, but we've got a better handle on their contributing factors. What are all the things that are leading to their pain in the first place? So we can actually give a more meaningful plan, and we understand the person and the goals better. In the group that I was in Back in Motion, it was a large group. We had many practices, and they trialed. Was it better at visit 1, visit 2, visit 4, visit 5? Visit 4 or 5 is too late. It's way too, half of the people are already finishing their acute stage of their care. But it was sort of the optimal time. The second thing I would say is I'd highly encourage you to book people 2 to 3 weeks ahead for the reasons that I said. It's the confidence you say in it, it's the wording you say in it, and it's how you actually explain it as benefits for the patient. Because you're only doing this to give that continuity of care that clients crave. For the few in the bell-shaped curve who don't want that, that's fine. Then they're just going to have to juggle, and they're going to get probably less care than you want to give them. But it's actually giving the patient the option. I will say to them, look, if you don't choose to do that, that's fine, but we may not be able to see you as often as you need to get the results. And so I've given them an informed decision. So now they can make their choice most of the time, if not all the time, when they're presented with the options, the benefits of actually booking ahead. Most of them take it. And the simple thing is I say to patients, look, if you don't need it, as we go along, we'll cancel the ones you don't need. And them clients are usually the ones who are a bit resistant, say, oh, okay. Were there any other questions coming through? We've got 2 minutes left.
James.
Yeah.
Darren here.
Darren.
Yeah,
Hi.
and you're definitely going to go on to Lecky next, because I know what Lecky wants to ask. It's big. Just with regard to the framing in maybe the first session, that you will provide a plan after, say, session 2 or session 3, as you're suggesting. Would you make sure you included that in that first session, saying, when I get to know you a little bit better, once we'll see how you respond to this first session.
Absolutely.
You'd flag that, yeah. Yeah.
And that's one of the key reasons, Darren, I forgot to add that, so thanks for sharing, is you're going to be much clearer on how long it's really going to take. You're going to be much clearer on how involved they are in their care as well by the visit 3. But yeah, absolutely. We don't leave it as a guesswork. We say to them, look, this is what we think's wrong. We give them a verbal. We actually put it on a very small, with compliments slip, just handwritten, diagnosis, treatment plan, like treatment, prognosis, what you can do. But we tell them, look, at visit 3, we're going to book in some extra time to actually go through this with you in much more detail. Once I've got a better handle on you and what you really want to achieve from therapy. Yeah. Good point. That's Lecky, you've got something you wanted to ask?
Yes, guys, thank you to all our hosts. I'll continue to learn from you all. My question is for Michael. The context is high ticket offers. In the frame of Alex Hormozi, we're playing with price anchoring. I'd just love to get some feedback on if this is a thing for you. For us, we're playing with this in the real world over the last 6 months, where we have a high ticket thing that's about $5,000. We've got our standard pricing, $190. And then we've got this middle tier thing that's about $600. And it's performing well. I guess I can see the school games, big shout out to you on what you're doing. That's awesome. Being a Hormozi guy, do you have any inputs, any observations that you've explored?
In regards to the 3-tiered pricing strategy?
More so like being allied health service providers, and we're stuck at the lower end of the pricing, say, spectrum. When, we do a lot of life-saving work, and I'm framing this as dental services that charge a premium because they deliver a high-value service. We all deliver that same thing, and it's a packaging of this service for the person that wants that high-value service. Yes, there's a few things in there. I just wanted to ask if this is something you've played with.
Yeah, I really love how you're thinking. And yeah, I do follow a lot of Hormozi stuff. I haven't played with it, and you're exciting me with what you're saying, because maybe we should. And it might lean into what Jade does and Nick now with the tiered pricing. Is like, do we have a really high price point and then a couple? But I think you're thinking even bigger. Is like, this is your package, your $5,000 package. This is your $4,000 package. This is your $1,000 package. I haven't played with it, but I know it works. So why not? Yeah, I'd be keen if anyone else has got some ideas on that.
I think to add to that, I think it ties on to when it comes to that framing and anchoring. We live in tall poppy syndrome here in Australia. Unfortunately, our culture is very, very different. Somebody drives a Lamborghini as a clinic owner and parks it in their clinic, and it's like, oh, you're charging too much. I paid for that back tire. Whereas when you go to America, if you have, a surgeon drive up and park in a car park, then they're the best surgeon and everyone in America wants to see them. So what we have to do is we have to reverse engineer it backward. Is once we actually get that social proof, once we get those senior clinicians who are fully booked, then we jack up the prices and then we separate the tiering. Once the proof is there, once the outcomes are there, then separate them and blow it up and charge an extra $15, and their patients will not leave. We did that recently. I took all we have clinicians, then we have senior clinicians, and I needed to create another tier above that. So what I had was supervising mentors, which are 10 plus years out in practice. We just bolted on $15 on the console overnight, didn't lose a single patient. Not one. Once the proof is there, put the price on it. And I use the other example where, when it came to, not that this is not virtue signaling, I don't want to talk about my brain tumor, but I had 2 options when I was going in for brain surgery 9 years ago. I could see the best of the best, which cost me another 80 grand, or I could see his registrar. Who do you think cut my head open? Do you think I found 80 grand if I find the best neurosurgeon in Australia? Don't take the choice away from people because you assume they can't afford it. If people want the best of the best, they will find the money. So deliver that first, deliver it with conviction, with a firmly held belief. Confidence and conviction are 2 different things. Confidence is I can do it. conviction is I believe I can and I will.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Mick. Thanks for the question, Becky. That was great. Lots of things we could be talking about, which will go forever. But I've got one more. I think we'll do one more and then we better finish it, and that's Matt. So, Matt, I've just unmuted you. So if you're happy to ask the question, I gather you've got one.
Yep. Thanks, James. Thanks to everybody. It's been sensational. My question's about rewarding that recognition or meaningful service for my team members, and sort of gathering patient feedback that we can use as a positive reinforcer for our therapists that are doing a fantastic job, rather than just collecting a net promoter score. Has anyone else used some way of gathering data from patients about, like, even, just messages that we can give back to our team members in front of each other about what a great job and how meaningful the work that we're doing is to our patients?
I can help you very easily with this, Matt. So for probably 3 years now, the other guy who's not here, who I can give a shout out to, Paul Hedges, Rate My Clinic assessment, which is like, he looks at 4 different areas, Matt, and one of them is a database-wide survey. He scrapes qualitative data for them, and then he presents it back to me as the owner. And then at our first team day of the year in January, I present that qualitative data to my team, Matt, alongside a summary of the business's financials, team satisfaction, and no, it's just those 3. So, you know, in a January every year in our half year team day, I summarize the previous year's financials, qualitative patient feedback, and people are named, and basically we try and get a little piece of feedback for every single person because they're sitting there and we're presenting to them, and then team satisfaction as well. And then from there I go on to, this is our plan for the next year. So I think that, like, you could do it yourself with SurveyMonkey, but as Julian Bowen said to me, the fortune is in the follow-up. Like, you're right, there's no use collecting this stuff if you don't formally sit down and present it to your team, and doing it as a group in that sort of setting worked for me best. So yeah, happy for the rest of you guys to contribute.
Yeah, I can add, look, that was a big part of what we did. It wasn't, the Net Promoter Score was a formal university-based study that we did, but we also basically had our admin team so well trained that anytime positive feedback was mentioned, they would collate it, our practice manager would collate it, and each staff meeting, which we had a weekly check-in staff meeting, that was the first thing that was brought up. Positive news that staff would share about what they heard from patients, and it was always shared in the group meeting because we wanted those sort of things to be shared, all the positive stuff, because it was very consistent with our culture, and it really made a massive impact on our staff, you know, raising their confidence, because otherwise a lot of things get missed. And I've sold my practices now, and I work at a practice called Physio West, and Beck is one of the managers there. She's very involved with Clinic Mastery, and she's brilliant at doing the same thing. Consistently, there's feedback that's put through the system about, yeah, we just got great feedback from this patient about how much difference they'd made. Those things make such an impact, and it balances out any time, you know, teams. I hate the crap sandwich thing, but I do think that staff have a point where when you start sharing more and more positive stuff, when there is a time when you've got to actually be tougher with your team, harsher with your team, or even with an individual, you've put enough, as Jason Smith used to say, you put enough in the emotional bank account. When you take a withdrawal, you don't overdraw. Whereas if you only give negative feedback, it's the only time people hear feedback, you're going negative, and that's when people feel negative. So yeah, I think do it consistently. Mick, you've got something to add?
Yeah, that's wonderful, James. I love the frequency that you do that at. Yeah, gratitude from patients shared often helps a lot. There was a moment at one of our retreats that I will never forget, and we got patients to send in a short video about their treatment and their experience, and they were highly emotional videos, like people that had broken legs and had car accidents and significantly changed their life. We got a snippet from each patient for every therapist in our team and played that. And what it highlighted to me, other than the tears of how much it meant to them, was that younger therapists particularly forget the impact we have on people's lives. And the more we can show them that, the more everything we've spoken about today becomes easier, because they really do forget the impact they have on people's lives because they don't get that feedback often. If they were to hear that every week in James's meeting and then hear it at the end of the year in that level of significance, they'd have no problem charging $130, $150 a consult. So I think that's wonderful that you do that, James.
Thanks, Mick. I reckon we'll finish because we're already over time. And I think a lot of us, including the speakers, have got other commitments. I hope it was there are things you can take home, each and every one of you. Even myself, hearing the other 4 speakers, I feel very privileged to be in the room with them and hearing some fantastic information and ideas. I find I'm going to be looking and listening over it again. Once it's processed, the video, we'll find a way to make sure we send you an email with the link, because I've been asked that a lot. Some people couldn't get on, but I want to thank all of you for the 150, 160, 170 actually when I last checked actually registered. Thank you for all of you who have given your time up, particularly those of you who came face to face. And also I want to give a big shout out to Mick, to Shane, to Nick, and to Jade for really making this, I hope, a real success. And as Jade's written, if you guys think it's a success, our plan is to actually do another one in 3 months. Jade's put up a hand to help this time, which will be a lot easier for me, which is great. Thank you, Jade. But thank you all for your attendance. Most of you know how to contact us, but if you need to, just reach out to any of us if you need to, and we're happy to help you out with any other questions. Thanks again for a great hour and a half or just over, guys, and have a great weekend and year ahead. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.